Hey, how are you guys? Welcome back. It's time to get into some more Italian Renaissance art. Well, today's the day we're going to meet Leonardo da Vinci. I'm happy to introduce three artworks to you. A couple of them you probably already are familiar with. But maybe I'll teach you something new that you didn't know before. Something to keep in mind here is we are going to be transitioning out of the 15th century into the 16th century. Kind of the first, quarter of the 16th century is considered sort of the pinnacle, what they call the High Renaissance. It's sort of like the high point of many of the big names, the rock stars, I guess you will, of the Renaissance that we'll meet in this unit. Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and others. This is a period of time where we're going to start to see them as artists, not just providing a service, but they are going to be their fame is going to grow. They're going to have reputations that elevate them to, I know we say this all the time, rock star status, but it's true. And because of that, they may have grown up in Florence or adjacent to. They may begin their careers in places like Florence, and of course Florence was the big cultural hub of the Quattrocento, but then they're going to get recruited. And the next city that's really going to be very significant in terms of the arts of the High Renaissance is Rome. And a big part of that is because of the artistic patronage of the popes at the Vatican in Vatican City. So let's move on to our PowerPoint and get going on this really interesting era of art history. All right, let me minimize myself, bring up my PowerPoint here. Okay, very good. Here we go, guys. Moving on to our slideshow. We are looking at the art of the High Renaissance. And again, as I mentioned, some key concepts. We're starting to see Rome become a big center. We're going to be talking about the papacy, which references the popes in Rome, and the Big Four. Just a little tongue-in-cheek for you from the sports world, but really referencing these names: Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Bramante. And I know many of you are like, I know some of those names. Those are Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you're right. But not Bramante, poor guy. He didn't get to be named after a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. All right, let's move on here. Don't worry, this famous lady is coming up soon. Concepts, again, artists as genius, artworks as masterpieces, Rome as the new center of High Renaissance culture. Not exclusively, we're still going to see a lot of activity in Florence as well. Moving to a map here, I just wanted to give you a sense of how things look around 1494. And here you can see, again, sort of this jigsaw puzzle kind of look to early Italy. It wasn't a unified country like we know it now. But here's where we've been, right? We've been in Florence, in the Proto-Renaissance. We were in Siena. Pisa's along here as well. Where are we going to begin today with Leonardo is up in the north, in the Duchy of Milan. This is where his stomping grounds were, if you will, where a lot of activity for him as an artist took place. Moving on, I just wanted to show you quickly a quick little silly tourist map. This is something you might pick up if you ever travel to the city of Rome. It gives you kind of a really easy guide to where all the iconic things to go see are. Look at that. There's a Triumphal Arch, you guys. There's the Roman Colosseum. So, Rome's very interesting. It's a layer cake, excuse me, of cultural experiences and civilizations. So that's why people are so drawn to it, because of its rich history. But on the other side of this river, what you find here is a city within a city. That's Vatican City here. And here's a little thumbnail shot of that. We'll be exploring that place. And of course, derived from the wealth of the church, we're going to see a lot of commissions coming out of that place, as well as some architectural projects during the High Renaissance here in Italy. All right, I just wanted to show you a few slides for fun, so just kind of relax, kick back, just to introduce our next iconic artist, Leonardo da Vinci. If there was anybody who embodied the concept of the Renaissance man, it was this guy. He could practically do anything. He lived a very long, prolific life as an artist, although he was famously slow working. He was, he wasn't like a big factory, but he had a lot of intelligence and breadth in both the arts and sciences, which he believed worked hand in hand. He's known to always be working, studying subjects such as engineering, mechanics, botany, anatomy. What a brain, right? Both human and an animal. So if I just kind of flip through some of his drawings here, you can see studies of water and mechanics, different devices he's thinking about inventing. And then he's famous for his annotations, for his scientific illustrations that show different views and, what we call now thumbnails and cross sections, right? This is something we're so used to seeing, particularly in all of our, K through 12 and college textbooks, right? Well, this is something that Leonardo da Vinci came up with to kind of annotate illustrations in this way. And not only just mechanics and engineering, but also human anatomy was immensely fascinating to Leonardo da Vinci. You can see all kinds of drawings in that regard here, whether just skeletal, muscular. He is going through all the layers and all the poses. He is very methodical in that regard. This is a famous drawing you're not responsible for called Vitruvian Man, but it's very much showing that he is a Renaissance humanist, because the idea the Greeks believed in is that man is the measure of all things, and this is something he's exploring with this drawing of a male figure and contained with these geometric forms showing this kind of proportional regularity, which we saw our architects Brunelleschi and Alberti embrace as well. Even in utero, man, Leonardo did his homework. This is something I might take a pass on myself, but I think this is really amusing too, is he was the master of even the description of the hands. As you can see here, it's like an Art 101 project, draw your hands. And of course, he gets an A. Our first painting by Leonardo da Vinci is called Madonna of the Rocks from 1483. It is the center panel of an altarpiece for a church in Milan that he executed in his favorite medium, oil paints. So oil paints have made it down to Italy, and we're going to see less commissions in tempera paints and more in oil paints. So here you see kind of the happy early days. You see the young Virgin Mary in the center of the composition. Then you have baby John the Baptist on our left. Baby Jesus, of course, is here on our right. And then we have an angel, just four figures. In a landscape setting here. And what is common with Leonardo da Vinci is he often has this sort of rocky, aquatic world that he likes to have as his landscape. He's also known as a painter, kind of works in a darker palette, more of kind of smoky browns and grays. It's not going to have vibrancy of a lot of our Renaissance artists here, but it makes his look very recognizable in that regard. As you can see, the figures occupy the foreground space, but these kinds of, almost seaside cavern-like caves, like you might see in Malibu at Leo Carrillo State Park, is an opportunity for him to render the illusion of depth and distance through atmospheric or aerial perspective. I hope you can see that in the distance. See how there's less contrast and less detail, which of course mimics the way the human eye experiences distance. Another thing associated with Leonardo da Vinci at this point is he uses something called the Renaissance triangle. So if you were to kind of draw a line connecting the back and the upper arm and head, and then continue down, connecting Mary's head, the angel's head, and move on down that cape, do you see it forms kind of a slope side? The triangle reads as calm and stable to the human eye. It also unifies the figures together. So together, it helps set the mood of the painting in a calm and stable way. So that's something we find Leonardo bringing to high Renaissance art as well. Another thing he brings to Renaissance art is psychological tenderness. And he conveys that through gesture and touch. So what you find is Mary bowing her head and extending her arm and touching the back of little John the Baptist in a tender way, right? They're not just kind of stoically sitting together like a Madonna and throne painting of the Proto-Renaissance. There's more interaction and warmth between the figures. Mary's other hand is open like this over the head of her son, baby Jesus. So that's almost like a protective gesture that a lot of mothers do, right? You're chasing your children at the park, for instance. The other thing is he uses glances and gestures to get us to move our eye from figure to figure to figure as well. So an old device, for instance, here is to have a figure look out at us, the viewers. So you have this angel looking out at us, the viewer, inviting us in the painting. We look to see where that angel is pointing. We look over then to where the angel's pointing to John the Baptist. We see where little baby John the Baptist, why is he kneeling and has his little hands clasped in a baby prayer? Well, he's looking over, showing reverence to his cousin, baby Jesus, who does that two-finger blessing gesture, like right back at you, brother, or cousin, kind of this baby little, mutual warm feelings and holy respect for one another that they're displaying in that instance. So then again, looking back to John the Baptist, you move up the arm of Mary. So all of this back and forth, it works compositionally to get us to look from figure to figure, but also those gestures and glances convey a warmth or tenderness, this sort of inner psychology that we really haven't seen in art until Leonardo da Vinci as well. Finally, there's something that I want to show you as well as I advance my slide. And I'm going to make myself disappear here so you can't see me anymore. Something called chiaroscuro. And chiaroscuro is the subtle play of light and dark. It's the subtle gradations of shadow and highlight that Leonardo was a master of. He's using oil paints. You can layer oil paints. You can be with its slow drying nature, be very meticulous with it. But you see, like with baby Jesus's face, finally, right, babies look like babies, right? No more adult looking faces on babies' bodies, but you can see all the nuance, all the anatomical studies that Leonardo da Vinci is famous for is described in convincing realism. You have an illusion of volume and mass, but also all the nuances, the shadows at the temple, the eye sockets, the little chubby cheeks, the little chubby wrists. You can see that on baby John the Baptist as well. So all of that is chiaroscuro, the subtle play of light and shadow to describe form. And of course, superbly done in this painting by Leonardo da Vinci. This is quickly just a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci I wanted to show you here. This is rendered in pencil and chalk, but it's a great example of chiaroscuro as well, where you see the subtle play of highlights and shadows. You see how rich and nuanced and subtle it is? It's not just a little band of shadow like we might have seen on Giotto's Madonna enthroned. This is much more nuanced, much more of a subtle gradations, and of course, it has this luminescence at the same time, and of course, this incredibly rich medium of oil paints allowed Leonardo da Vinci to accomplish this. So there you have it, an early work from a master, Leonardo da Vinci's Madonna of the Rocks.